Marvel Comics' latest Sentry miniseries is over, and you probably didn't notice because basically no one was reading it. The first issue, I guess, did kind of okay. I think it debuted in the top 50. The second issue was already like at 160 or something like that. And there's no way that issue number 4 will even end up probably in the top 200 or something like that. It's just not a character anyone really cares about. I didn't personally read the miniseries because who cares? Wow, Sentry is going to be in Thunderbolts, a movie that I don't think a lot of people are looking for. And, Sentry, it's something that Marvel Comics tried. It was another attempt at creating their own kind of Superman type character that clearly feels out of place within the Marvel Comics universe. Hell, they gave Jeff Lemire, a well-established comic book writer, an ongoing series with Sentry, and it only lasted 5 or 6 issues. This is just one of those characters that no one really cares about, and it's another attempt at heroes fighting heroes in a tournament to determine who's the next person to take up the mantle of Sentry or whatever, which I think is a concept everyone's basically tired of at this point. It's kind of like the same thing over and over again. And who wants a mantle that doesn't really mean anything anyway? But it was the most predictable thing in the history of the world. It was so lame when it came out. And this article that was written about it was so stupid and laughable, I decided to cover it. Marvel Comics has finally crowned the successor to the Sentry, one of the publisher's most controversial and embattled superheroes. The new heir to Robert Reynolds' Power of a Million Exploding Suns brings some interesting representation to the Marvel Universe that I'm personally excited to see. Personally, the writer, not me personally. Sentry number 4 by writer Jason Liu finishes the saga of the new Sentry with the out-of-control Sentry inheritor Ryan Topper facing off with fellow recipient of Sentry's powers, Mallory Gibbs, a young woman with cerebral palsy who has struggled to fully control her new abilities. Well, my goodness, why don't you just tell us who's going to get the new powers of the Sentry? Is it going to be the straight white blonde character, or is it going to be the female minority disabled character? I just so happen to wonder which one Marvel Comics are going to pick. I mean, it's so predictable, it's not even funny. Maybe if it was Mallory Gibbs, disabled female minority character fighting, I don't know, like an Inuit Mongoloid or something like that, maybe you'd be like, I don't know who's going to win here. But if it's a straight white male character fighting off with this character, obviously Ryan Topper was not going to win. And shockingly, they made him just sociopathic because, he's a straight white male character. Can't be having that. We can't have any good representation of that. And Mallory Gibbs, despite having cerebral palsy, is just, a perfect character. She's amazing. She takes everything in stride. She has the perfect attitude about having superpowers. She doesn't even want them. She doesn't feel like she deserves it. And then she realizes if she doesn't take the powers, they're going to fall into the wrong hands. And it's up to her. And it's her responsibility to take over the Sentry's powers. And it's another mantle swap for the purposes of mantle swaps for a character that really isn't even all that old. Like, when did they even debut Sentry? Was it, well, it's Marvel Knights, right? 2000? Something like that? The character never really got over. But this certainly isn't going to help not only with the Sentry, but certainly Marvel Comics' reputation as a publisher and doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. It doesn't matter what the mantle is. They got to give it to somebody that's younger, more diverse, and right for that new audience that they're going to finally pin down in the next 25 years or so, hopefully. They might go out of business before that happens, but they will die trying. That's what it feels like at this point. The article continues. As the pair clash, each using the powers of the original Sentry, Bob Reynolds, which were distributed among several people following his death, Mallory sees the spirits of all the other heirs of the Sentry's powers, each of whom was killed by Ryan. Tapping into her own abilities, she manages to temporarily resurrect the other Sentries, all of whom manage to beat Ryan down and absorb his powers. Just breathtaking stuff when you see it. It's such a cliche at this point, and it's not very well illustrated. There probably isn't anything truly exceptional or groundbreaking or even kind of average about this particular comic book. But we got the Rey Palpatine moment where all the other dead people that have had the Sentry powers return to validate her and be like, you are the chosen one, as if we didn't already know that when you had the final fight set up to be a straight white male character murdering everybody and a purse puppy character that was just out there doing the right thing the whole time, as if she needed more validation from Marvel Comics herself. They even brought back the other characters that there was no chance that they were ever going to be the Sentry. Was Marvel Comics really going to allow them to beat the lady with cerebral palsy? That's a lot of diversity checkboxes that were checked off by that character in defeating this, and it was pretty lame. It's exactly what you would have expected it to be. And though Mallory Gibbs inherits the Sentry's powers and even his legacy, in her own version of Sentry's blue and yellow costume, she tells Misty Knight that she believes that Robert Reynolds' dark side, the Void, has left his superhero identity tainted. Instead, she announces she'll take up her own superhero name, Solaris, presumably a reference to the aforementioned power of a million exploding suns. So there you go. Not only do the other characters show up and uplift her and be like, she is the chosen one. She was always the one that was going to win. Misty Knight, of course, lets her know you were the right one to win the whole time. She also gets to shit personally on the legacy of Robert Reynolds, whose mantle she was chosen to perhaps continue on the legacy of that character. Not good enough. I am not going to be representing a straight white male character who fell into some hard times and certainly was transformed into something kind of evil there with the Void. Not good enough. That's completely tainted. And I'm taking it all of myself, even though it's the exact same look and you got the exact same power set and all that stuff. But she can't be associated with his legacy or whatever. Even though Marvel Comics and Jason Liu and the artist Luigi, is it Zagaria, have wrapped the character in his legacy, because, I don't know, I guess she's taking a stand. But she did need to take one more massive dump on Robert Reynolds before she walked out the door, stealing his legacy, his powers, and then basically burying it underneath the ground because it wasn't good enough for her. The article concludes, Solaris has the interesting distinction of being one of only a few wheelchair-using superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Due to her cerebral palsy, there's far too little representation for wheelchairs and physical disability in superhero comics. So it's cool to see Marvel not shying away from putting Mallory Gibbs in the spotlight. Marvel hasn't announced when or where we'll see Solaris again, but now that she's been established in the Marvel Universe, it's only a matter of time. That's a bit optimistic of a take, seeing this new version of Sentry Solaris within the Marvel Comics universe. She will be treated like all the other purse puppy characters that come up and steal someone else's ability. They'll show her out when it's a Marvel Voices Black History Month, Marvel Voices Disabled Representation Month, whatever it is. She will be a variant cover model for books like that, and then will never really be heard from within the confines of the 616 again, because that's what they do with all these characters, and maybe they'll do a 4-part miniseries in 2 years. Once again, have it confirmed that, no one actually cares about this character or this concept. Certainly, we have had really cool wheelchair-bound superheroes in the past, like the big ones that show up in your mind. Obviously, the most famous one is Professor X himself, who's so powerful it doesn't matter that he's, in a wheelchair or whatever. He can affect the entire world with the amount of power that he has as the leader of the X-Men, the man that got the team together, Xavier School for gifted youngsters and all that stuff. The other big one, I guess, at DC Comics would be Oracle, which I personally still think is the best version of Barbara Gordon, where she's the woman in the seat that's controlling all the technology and the person in the ear and kind of putting all the chess pieces around Gotham City and all that kind of stuff. Oracle is a really, really compelling character that shows that, you can have your worst day and you can, have to fight through this disability, but you can still be a better version of yourself afterward. And I think Oracle's a really compelling character. I guess the other one, and I don't know that he's not necessarily wheelchair bound, but is Captain Marvel Jr., Freddie Freeman. None of these characters are particularly new that I'm talking about here, but I think Freddie Freeman really worked, and Captain Marvel Jr. was a really cool character. Obviously he was injured, because there was a fight between Captain Marvel and some other guys, and he ends up with like a lame leg, and he ends up with those walking braces and stuff like that. But Freddie Freeman, probably a lot of people know him from the movie. They got a really good actor to portray him that was really likable, and obviously they've kind of transitioned the character within comic books to more portray that version of the hero, kind of like him. But there are a couple of wheelchair-bound superheroes that have been introduced, I don't know, over the last decade, and they very much feel like a product of their time. Silver Scorpion, not a Marvel or DC character, but that was supposed to be like a big thing there for a while. Go read those comic books if you would like to feel embarrassed for the writer or creator. And his concept of what a wheelchair-bound superhero would look like. Sun Spider, I guess, is the more recent one, where I guess Marvel Comics did a fan thing where you could go in and submit your version of a Spider character for the Spider-Verse. Sunspider wins out. A wheelchair-bound character. They went out and got T. Franklin to write the character, and oh my goodness, even more embarrassing than Silver Scorpion. I'll be honest. The T. Franklin Sunspider story makes Silver Scorpion read like fucking Batman. Not only just Batman, but like Batman Year One. You know what I mean? The best Batman story of all time. That's how bad and embarrassing the Sunspider story is. So, you know, it's tough to do these concepts in modern times with the modern sensibilities of writers, to where they only want to highlight the disability and they forget that you're supposed to be highlighting that there's superheroes and maybe some of the challenge that they overcome. Certainly superhero comic books do have a long history of celebrating characters with disabilities. You know, you think about Daredevil, who's blind. You can think about more recently, you've got the Winter Soldier, who's missing a limb at one point. Nick Fury's missing an eye. You know, there's a lot of disabled characters out there. Unfortunately, I do not believe Solaris, the inheritor of the Sentry mantle, will be among those, because it was more embarrassing than anything. And you kind of feel bad for Jason Liu, who's more of a comic book artist, not really known as a writer. But when people are writing articles this stupid and this laughable about what you just did, you know you probably missed the mark on that one. So, I forgot to mention, probably the best one, and certainly the most modern one that I could talk about that's really, really awesome. If you want to see an awesome portrayal of a wheelchair-bound, disabled superhero and really a good flavor on a take that nobody like a T. Franklin or Jason Liu or, you know, basically anybody at Marvel or DC these days would ever dare actually do, go read Superior by Mark Millar. It's more of like a Shazam kind of allegory, although some people would say it's kind of like a Superman comic book, but it's about a kid in a wheelchair who basically makes a deal with the devil, and he has to stick with this deal if he wants to be able to remain walking and all that kind of stuff. And it's got a fantastic ending that nobody at Marvel or DC would ever have the balls to do. Tip of the cap to Mark Millar, once again schooling a lot of these younger writers these days on how to do these things right. And they could certainly learn a lot of things from Superior. If you haven't checked that one out, that's the one I would really recommend if you're looking for an awesome take on how this can be done well and really compelling and really get you into the character. Unfortunately, Mallory Gibbs in the Tournament to Determine the Sentry was not that. It was the secret sauce of why Marvel Comics are failing a lot these days. If you would like more conversations regarding comic books and movies and superheroes and all that kind of stuff, I do want to invite you to go check out the Patreon if you haven't done that one. 8 hours of brand new podcast every single week from yours truly, along with some of your favorite guests on Thinking Critical. If you haven't seen that one, there's a link in the video description. I invite you to come check us out because I think there's some stuff there that you will absolutely love.